There are stories that shimmer like old gold under moonlight faint, almost forgotten, but strangely alive. Among them are tales, not of how kings lived, but how they vanished, disappeared into shadow, smoke, or silence. The year was 882, in the emerging land of the Rus, where icy rivers twisted through dark pine valleys. A king named Rurik ruled with iron will. He had carved a realm from chaos and cold, a kingdom that would one day become Russia. But it was not his conquests that echoed most, it was his exit. History says he died peacefully. It was a place where Greek and Indian art melted together, where monks carved stories into cliffs. But if one listens closely, the pattern forms a crown that vanishes, a body that cannot be found, a night when the stars behave strangely. We think of kings as eternal monuments, yet history is littered with royal ghosts. Their kin, Menander I known, as Milinda was, a great Buddhist patron. Strangely, after his death, there was no grand tomb. The legends say his body was divided into relics and hidden across the land. But there's another version, that he renounced his throne, walked into the mountains, and never came back. Some monks believed he became something beyond a manner being of pure enlightenment. Others, more quietly, wondered if he simply escaped from the weight of the crown. But no grave was found, no body, only whispers. Some claimed he entered the woods alone on the night of the Red Star, a comet that scorched the sky and never returned. Others said the forest opened to swallow him whole. His son Igor would rule after him, but never speak of that night. Did they find secret places we have since forgotten, or were they taken, spirited away by forces older than empire? Perhaps, in the silence of their final moment, they saw something none of us ever will. Something that whispered, "Leave, now. Step off the throne. Walk into the unknown." The royal chronicles offer a single, cryptic line. Rurik walked into silence, not defeated in battle, not felled by poison or blade, but simply, King Alaric II of the Visigoths, after defeat at in 507, was said to be buried in a river that was his men, loyal even in death, were rumored to have diverted the river's flow, buried him in its dry bed with gold and silver, then let the waters rush back, drowning the secret forever. But recent surveys found no trace, no grave, no gold. Some now wonder, was it a burial, or a disappearance, a story forged to hide his survival, or a magic of river and earth, too old to explain? Gone, as if plucked from the thread of history by invisible fingers. Across continents and centuries, from misty isles to golden deserts, some monarchs ruled with power, but ended as riddles. Tonight, we begin a journey into the unseen corridors of ancient palaces, down marble steps soaked not with blood, but with mystery. Let us begin in the forests of the north, where legend and frost walk hand in hand. Centuries later, far to the west, in the green highlands of Scotland, another king would slip between the pages of time, move next to the deserts of Egypt, where the sun bakes history into stone. Pharaoh Akhenaten, the heretic king, the one who dared to reject gods and build a city for the sun alone, vanished so thoroughly that later pharaohs tried to erase his name, but his body, even today, is debated. The tomb in Amarna was found empty. Was he murdered? Did he flee into the Nubian sands? Or did his priests, enraged by his revolution, perform a rite so forbidden? It was never written down. When you walk through the ruins of Akhenaten, his abandoned city, the silence feels too deep, like something is still listening. In a remote valley of the Hindu Kush, a kingdom once flourished known as Gu. So many kings, so many shadows. It is easy to dismiss these stories as myth, as folklore given wings by time. Why did they vanish? Were they escaping something or someone? And so they did. In the sun-washed plains of Mesopotamia, where the air still tastes of sand and memory, there once ruled a king who shaped the very idea of rule itself, Sargon of Akkad. He was a man of myth and empire, who rose from obscurity to forge the world's first great kingdom. And yet, for all his conquests, his end remained shrouded. King Olaf Tryggvason of Norway was a Christian warrior king who fought to bring his people to a new faith. Mansa Musa, the richest man who ever lived, had a predecessor, his uncle, Mansa Abu Bakr II. His story barely remembers him. King Wenceslas III, the last of the Premoslite dynasty, died without warning in 1306. Officially, he was murdered, but no witness saw the killer. No motive was clear. The coronation crown had been missing days before, and when found, It was cold to the touch, as if abandoned in snow. There are strange reports in local chronicles that the king had begun hearing voices, that he claimed an old ancestor called to him in dreams, that he had started sleepwalking. The final night, his guards heard music soft, foreign, fluting through the air. And then, nothing, just an open window, a fallen cloak, and the quiet rustle of trees. But legend tells he launched a fleet of 2,000 ships across the Atlantic in the early 1300s, seeking the edge of the world. Is it merely coincidence that so many rulers vanish without trace? Or do they walk a path we cannot, see a royal road, buried beneath history, beneath time itself? He handed his crown to Musa and sailed into the unknown. Neither he nor his armada were ever seen again. Perhaps the crown, once worn too long, seeks to return to something older than throne or temple, a place where kings cease to be kings and become something else entirely. Some believe they perished at sea, but in distant parts of Brazil and the Caribbean, faint traces of West African culture exist. Words, rhythms, tools. Did he survive? Did he find a new world before Columbus ever set sail? Or did he vanish into the very horizon he chased? In 1000 AD, during the Battle of Svolder, he leapt from his ship into the Black Sea, rather than be captured. No body was ever recovered. The sagas say he drowned, but fishermen spoke of sighting Zan, old man on far islands, barefoot in the snow, whispering to the wind. Some said he became a hermit, others that he became a shadow, forever watching the coast. The truth, it melted into legend, and legend into fog. Ancient tablets hinted a rebellion, at cities turning away, but none speak of his death. Not directly. The final records stop as if mid-sentence, like a breath caught in the throat of time. Some believe he died in exile, others that his court buried the truth beneath the palace floor. But one tale speaks of a sealed chamber beneath the ziggurat, where the king sleeps still, surrounded by golden lions and unspoken secrets, guarded not by men but by silence. Far to the east, in the bamboo-wrapped mountains of ancient China, another monarch would vanish not by war or betrayal, but by his own hand. Emperor Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor who unified the warring states and began the Great War, obsessed over immortality. He drank mercury, swallowed pearls, sought elixirs from islands that may never have existed. But when he finally died or disappeared on a journey to the eastern provinces, his death was kept secret for weeks. His corpse, reportedly stinking and rotting, was hidden in a wagon of fish to mask the scent. But legends say something stranger, that when his court opened his tent one morning, the bed was empty, the emperor gone, only a scroll left behind, with a single character. Still, they claimed a decoy was placed in the wagon, that the real emperor had transcended, or perhaps fled the very world he had conquered. Some centuries later, on the bitter wind of the North Seas, another royal fate would slip through human hands, cross the burning sands to Mali, in the heart of West Africa, where one of history's most mysterious disappearances would unfold. And now, return once more to Europe, to Bohemia, where the forest once swallowed a king like it would a fable. What ties these kings together? What thread loops from Sargon to Wenceslas, through ocean, mountain, and memory? Perhaps it is power, not death, that demands an exit. The deeper we search, the more we find not answers, but echoes. And in those echoes, still walking. The halls of history are not only lined with stone and scripture, they are haunted by absence. In those spaces where a king should have stood, we find only the outline of a life. Among them was Romulus Augustus, the so-called last emperor of the Western Roman Empire, a boy when crowned, a shadow when deposed. History says he was exiled, but where the records end abruptly. Timur, the scourge of empires, was a conqueror, so feared that even his death was said to bring calamity. His body was entombed in Samarkand, but centuries later, when Soviet archaeologists opened his grave, they found the tomb empty save for a scrap of parchment that read, "I ride still," the bones attributed to him. Later analysis raised questions. Too small, too different. Was the real Timur buried elsewhere, hidden by loyalists? Or did he, like the storms he summoned, vanish into the wind? Some say he was taken to Naples, others that he lived in a monastery, writing by candlelight. Stories of him are barely recorded, passed only by firelight. It's said he ruled a city carved into the cliffs, reachable only by a hidden pass known to the wind itself. The weight of rule, The hunger for the unknown? Or is there a doorway, hidden behind power and pageantry, that only the crowned can see? A path lit not by torches but by memory, and when they step through it, do they find escape or eternity? One winter, during a blizzard, the entire royal household was found empty, food still warm, dogs still chained. No bodies, no blood, only silence, and footprints leading upward into the snow, then stopping abruptly at the cliff's edge. Not a fall, just an end. The locals believed the Sky King heard a call from beyond the mountains, that he walked into the air itself. But one document, hidden deep within a monastery vault, speaks of a strange youth who arrived in Britannia, bearing no name, only a ring with a wolf carved in silver. Gentle ruptures in the fabric of time, as if someone tugged a thread and the king simply unraveled. And all was always there, is something left behind. A branch, a ring, a trail that leads nowhere, or perhaps elsewhere. The crown does not always fall. Sometimes it floats away. The monks who sheltered him wrote that he never aged, that his eyes remained sharp, his posture regal, even as decades passed. Then one day he vanished, leaving behind only the ring, and a map of stars unfamiliar to any known sky. Some disappearances do not happen in a single night, with swords drawn or ships sunk. Some happen slowly, like a fading star, until one day no light remains. Take, for instance, the tale of King Ludovico of Sicily. Few outside the old villages now recall his name, but among the citrus groves and ruins of old Palermo, his legend lingers like perfume. Crowned at a young age, Ludovico was known as quiet, pious, always with eyes fixed on something distant. In 1355, during a particularly strange eclipse, he dismissed his advisors and locked himself in his private quarters. For 3 days, no one saw him. When the door was forced open, the room was empty, though the candles were still lit. No secret passages, no signs of escape, only a single olive branch resting on his pillow. Some claimed he had been taken by angels. Others whispered that he had followed an ancient calling, something older than kingship, something that dwelled in the Sicilian hills before temples were raised, crossed the sea and stepped into the marble corridors of ancient Rome, where emperors rose and fell like storms. In the dense jungles of Central America, the city of Tikal once thundered with the power of kings, but one of its greatest rulers, Jesor Chankayawal II, simply vanished from the glyphs. There was no record of his death, no monument, no successor's triumph. His palace was abandoned mid-construction. The locals told of a dream. He had a vision of a serpent in the sky calling him home. On the last night he was seen, the stars flickered strangely, as if something moved behind them. The next morning, his robes lay folded on the temple steps, and high above, vultures circled but never descended. In the steppes of Central Asia, where winds howl with ancestral fury, another king rode into myth. Further east, in the high Himalayan kingdom of Mustang, there lived a monarch known only by title, the Sky King. These are not tales of defeat. These are not stories of assassination or exile. They are absences. It forces the question, what is it that calls kings away? Listen closely. There is a hush that lingers around power, an ancient quiet that no coronation can dispel. Perhaps that silence is not absence but invitation. Perhaps, across centuries, there has always been a door hidden in moonlight or buried beneath stone that only those born to rule can see. A just monarch, a builder of temples and mines, Boj was beloved across his realm. But in his final years, strange stories began to circulate, that he had grown silent, that he spent hours beneath the stars in a stone pavilion, speaking to no one, that he had drawn a map made not of land, but of dreams. His death is known, so they say, but the location of his burial remains one of history's most tightly guarded secrets. No tomb has ever been found, no monument. The legends are wild and many, that his funeral escort killed every witness to preserve secrecy, that the river was diverted, then restored, to bury him beneath water. But there are stranger tales, passed only among herdsmen and nomads. That Khan did not die, but rode east one last time, toward the rising sun, into a land that exists, not on maps, but in memory, that he waits, sword and bow in hand, for a time when the sky itself will summon him back. On the last night of his life, lightning struck the temple lake, splitting its waters. The final journey alone, unguarded, unexplained, the absence of a body, the presence of a symbol, a folded robe, a sealed scroll, but ascension, a return to some forgotten promise whispered at birth. Perhaps kings are not chosen by people, but by something older, something that waits until their rule is done, and then calls them home, a vanished crown. Always something left behind, like the last note of a song meant only for those who listened carefully. Some say the king walked calmly into the parting waters and was never seen again. His court claimed a natural death, of course, but the scroll he left behind bore a single line: "I'd go now to where the sun sets beneath the mountain that breathes." What if it's the beginning of another one we cannot write? This door does not appear to warriors, nor to poets, nor to prophets. Yet even here, mystery clings. Emperor Ontoku, a child ruler caught in the fury of the Genpei War, is said to have drowned at the Battle of Dan-nura. His grandmother leapt into the sea with him in her arms to prevent capture, but later chronicles whisper that the body was never found. Some claimed a fisherman rescued him, raising him in a hidden village. Others said he was spirited away by the sea god Ryu, and in the coastal shrines of Shima, old priests still leave offerings for a sleeping boy with royal blood, whose spirit never aged. Perhaps the emperor did die that day, or perhaps the ocean, with its infinite memory, kept him safe and secret. Only two kings, and when it opens, even empires cannot hold him back. Consider the tale of King Boj, the philosopher king of medieval India, who ruled from the city of Dar. In Japan, the chrysanthemum throne has passed through unbroken centuries. In the deep green heart of Africa, in a kingdom called Congo, another monarch vanished into reverence. King Afonso I, once a Christian reformer, turned inward in his later years. His letters, previously eloquent and clear, became cryptic. He spoke of dreams, of voices in the soil, of ancestors who walked in daylight. The last confirmed record of him ends mid. The next royal decree bore the seal of a new king, but no mention of burial or farewell, just transition. Some tribal elders still tell of the white-robed king who walked westward alone, into the mists near the Congo River, following the call of spirits only he could hear. Even in the vast openness of the Mongol steppes, the great Genghis Khan disappeared without clarity. Across all these tales, a pattern shimmers like heat on distant dunes. The royal who grows distant. Is it possible that some kings choose to vanish, that the burden of rule opens a door for them, a way out, not defeat, not escape? The world records their absence. But what if absence is not the end of their story? And so, when we walk through ruins and read names carved in stone, we must remember, some kings are not dead. They are simply elsewhere. As dusk falls across the corridors of history, it becomes harder to tell where the past ends and legend begins. But perhaps that is where the truth lives, in the fading light between fact and fable. His reign is written in the wind, etched into rocks with forgotten scripts. What little remains says he communed with stars, that he often climbed a sacred peak of Mount Ararat. He had been ill for months, plagued by visions and dreams he dared not share. His name has been lost, but fragments carved into clay tablets speak of a ruler who walked with the gods, who disappeared on the day the sky changed color. Locations where time stutters, where people dream strange dreams after passing through, places where animals fall silent, where compasses spin, as if these spots on earth are thin veils between worlds, drawn back only for those whose names are etched into destiny. The tablets describe the king whose name was drawn into the heavens by the twin lights, or have they crossed into a realm we cannot see, but sometimes can feel, a place not of death, but of waiting, a pressure in the air, a sense of someone just behind them, comrigo silent. Could it be that some thrones were never empty, only invisible, a kingdom of silence, ruled not by gold or law, but by memory and myth, where they gather, not as rulers of men, but as watchers of time? Astronomers now believe this could refer to a rare cosmic event, a double comet, seen just once every 1,000 years. The last line on the clay is haunting in its simplicity. He will return when the stars speak his name once more. He ordered his attendants to burn his royal garments and crown. One autumn morning, he wandered into the woods, dressed as a peasant. The forest was searched for weeks. Nothing. But woodcutters began to speak of a white-robed man seen only at dawn, standing at the tree line, whispering in a tongue no one understood. He would vanish the moment anyone approached. Some thought it a ghost. Others believed it was the king, untouched by age, speaking to the spirits of the forest that had claimed him. One night, During a sudden snowfall in summer, he left his tent behind. No footprints were found, just a curved blade, half buried in ice, and a golden coin placed perfectly at the summit's edge. For centuries, shepherds claimed to see a figure wandering the ridge during storms, eyes glowing like fireflies, never speaking, never aging. Some said it was Art, others called him the crownless watcher, and in that uncertain glow, the vanished kings are not lost, they are waiting. In the ancient Armenian highlands, where mountains rise like sleeping gods, there ruled a king named At. In a jungle once ruled by the Khmer Empire, King Jayavarman IX vanished during a religious procession. He had ordered a pilgrimage deep into the forest, toward a temple no longer marked on maps. The royal guards said he entered the innermost chamber with a single monk and did not emerge. Hours passed, then days. When they dared to force the door open, it revealed nothing. No monk, no king, only a sculpture of a lotus flower, freshly carved in the center of the floor. The stone was warm to the touch. In modern times, archaeologists have searched the site with ground-penetrating radar. They found a hollow space beneath the temple but no entrance, as if the earth had swallowed him in a perfect breath. The same silence fell in the forests of Poland, where King Henrik the White disappeared in 1266. Even in the cradle of civilization in the great city of your legends, whisper of a Sumerian high king who vanished before written records began. Patterns emerge like constellations, kings who leave behind no blood, no wounds, only absence. And the question rises like mist from a forgotten lake. Are these kings truly gone? Sometimes, late at night, near the ruins of these old places, people still report the feeling of being watched. Perhaps these vanished kings are not lost to us at all. Perhaps they are closer than we dare imagine. The deeper we follow the trails of vanished kings, the more the fabric of history begins to tremble. For each story we uncover, 100 more remain buried beneath stone, beneath silence, beneath the weight of forgetting. It speaks of a king who ruled without a name, known only as he who was shown the ladder. He came to power during a time of famine, rebuilt the churches carved from living rock, and brought peace to a fractured land. But near the end of his reign, he began to change. They speak of madness, exile, assassination. They cling to what can be measured, recorded, placed into footnotes. But folklore whispers differently. It tells of places not just physical, but temporal, where time becomes soft, like wax, in heat, where kings are not buried, but folded into the landscape, into myth, into memory. And always, these disappearances come during moments of transition, solar eclipses, blood moons, earthquakes, dreams shared by many, as if the world itself opens, just slightly, and allows one more to pass through. He no longer spoke during council. He watched the sky for hours each night, his fingertips covered in ash, drawing shapes in the dust. What if the crown is not a symbol of rule, a place beyond death and life? They claim that only 8 such kings are chosen each age, that once all 8 vanish, a new age begins. A reset, a reshaping of reality. No one knows where this belief came from. There is no scripture, no stone, only a song, hummed by the oldest monks when the moon is high, but of sacrifice. Then one morning, he climbed the steps of the church of St. Gabriel alone. Witnesses say a beam of pale light struck the altar and, when the light faded, he was gone, just gone. His sandals remained perfectly placed. The priests sealed the chamber and never spoke his name again. And somewhere in the shifting patterns, a possibility begins to flicker, that these disappearances were not accidents, not isolated, but connected by something older than language, older than crowns. Their last chieftain, Eric the Deep, ruled over a dying colony as the winters grew longer and the stars began to shift. One night, he gathered his people for a final feast. He said nothing, only drank deeply from a horn carved with runes none could read. Then he walked out onto the frozen sea. The ice did not crack, it did not groan, it simply accepted him. He walked until the fog swallowed him whole. The next morning, strange patterns were found burned into the ice, circles, and a shape that looked like a crown with no head. In the highlands of Ethiopia, there is a tale known only among the priests of Lalibela. In northern France, amidst mist-covered moors and forgotten abbeys, whispers persist about Charles the Mad, not of his madness, but of his final moment. Officially, he died, broken, raving in a palace cell. But servants spoke of something stranger, that during his last night, He stood completely still for hours, staring into a mirror that had never before reflected anything but the wall. Then, just before dawn, the glass shattered inward, and the king was no longer there. Only the chain of his royal medallion remained, resting on the windowsill, cold with dew. Further north, in the ice-choked fjords of Greenland, the Norse settlers tell a different kind of tale. Historians dismiss these tales, but here is the question that lingers like smoke. What if these kings were called, not chosen by birthright alone, but marked? In some desert the monks speak of the quiet lineage, a hidden order of kings who never died, but crossed into what they call the second throne. The eighth will walk alone, beneath stars newly born, and the world will forget, to remember once more. Could it be that the vanishing of kings is not a mystery, but a cycle, a rhythm in the blood of the world? And if that's true, how many have vanished now? 7 or 8? 7 kings have vanished, 7 stories swallowed by time, each one different in name and land, but all echoing the same hollow chime: power, solitude, then silence. And now the whispers grow louder, because if the monks are right, if the old song is true, then there must be an eighth, the final silence. And that silence may not lie in the past but in our own time. Consider the case of King Tewodros II of Ethiopia. Officially, he died by suicide in 1868 as British forces closed in, but the final eyewitness report contradicts the others. A soldier described how, moments before the gunshot, a wind swept through the fortress so fiercely it tore flags from their poles. Her death, too, was said to be fire, all shadows. But then, at the end, there was a blank page, or so it seemed. But now, we must ask what lies beneath them. But many believe the blaze was empty, that she and her women slipped through secret tunnels under the fortress, vanishing into myth. It bore no author, no title, only the symbol of an Ouroboros, a serpent eating its tail. The same star-crowned figure carved into the temples of Angkor, the same sigil found scorched into the ice where Eric vanished, the same spiral drawn into the dust by King Boj. He wore furs that no one could identify, stitched with a pattern that looked like interlocking thrones. He spoke no known language, but one word he kept repeating over and over, like a chant: seek, an Egyptian term: power, spirit, authority. The language was old, but the meaning clear. It described 8 kings, 8 vanishings, and a ritual that tied them together. Not blood magic, not sacrifice, something called the undoing of the name. The text claimed that kings are not remembered for how they ruled, but how they ended. That the true legacy of a monarch lies not in monuments, but in disappearance. That through total erasure, they become immortal. For centuries afterward, desert traders told of a veiled woman with eyes like mirrors, who never aged, who asked only one question to those she met: what becomes of a throne when it is no longer seen? In the chaos, no one saw the king fall. When they reached his chamber, they found blood. Yes, but also a second set of footprints, barefoot, leading away from the balcony into the mountains. No one followed them, and curiously, no body was ever presented to the public, only a closed coffin. His sword, a weapon of legend, was missing. Rumors say it was seen decades later, buried in a cave in the Simien Mountains, still gleaming, untouched by time. Then there was the case of Rani Padmavati of Chittaqueen, not king, but crowned nonetheless by her people's devotion. All stories, yes, because somewhere in the dusty libraries of Prague, hidden behind a sealed wall, a manuscript was discovered just 10 years ago. It is a chilling idea, that to escape death, one must vanish from time itself. The manuscript even mentioned Pliss's coordinates, veiled in riddles that match the burial sites of kings we've already explored. Under infrared light, words appeared. 7 have gone. The 8th watches still, and below it, a symbol we've seen before. Who is the 8th? Was it already fulfilled, and we did not see it? Or is the 8th king still among us, walking unrecognized, waiting for the final passage to open? In a village in northern Greenland, a strange old man was once found half buried in snow. He died 2 days later, without ever revealing who he was. Or perhaps he did, and we simply could not understand. What binds all of this together? A silence, not of absence but of concealment. A crown passed hand to hand, not to rule, but to vanish. We thought we were tracing mysteries scattered across time, but now we must ask, what if we've been watching a ritual unfold, one piece at a time, and the final piece has yet to fall into place? The stars are ancient, but their silence is older still. They have watched the rise and fall of kings, empires, faiths, and dreams, yet they blink on, unchanged, as if waiting, and in each we found a whisper, a symbol, a space where someone powerful stepped away, not crushed by defeat, not stolen by time, but moved intentionally out of reach. Perhaps they too remember what we have forgotten, that not all kings die, and not all thrones are meant to be sat upon. Or perhaps it waits for someone new, not born in a palace, but chosen by something older than bloodlines. Perhaps the eighth is not a king at all. Perhaps it is the listener. We have walked through ruined cities and frostbitten coasts, through jungles, deserts, and shadowed chambers where names once echoed. They believed it could happen while listening to stories, that certain tales are woven not to entertain, but to awaken memory. So now we must ask what remains. A test, a door disguised as a tale. No one could translate it completely, but the phrase repeated beneath it in three languages, Latin, Sanskrit, and Sumerian, was simple, not just of them but of us. If the cycle of 8 is real, eight, silent, ascents, then perhaps the final crown has not yet fallen. You not random, rhythmic, almost like breathing. It bore no language we recognized, but in the center was the unmistakable carving of a human figure with a crown floating above, untouched. Not yet, but we can feel something stirring beneath the surface. A weight, a watching. Around it, 8 smaller figures stood in silence, facing outward, as if guarding the invisible. Not for glory, not for rule. What if that's what this story truly is? The monks of the quiet lineage spoke of the dreaming hour, a moment when time grows thin, and those who listen deeply enough may hear their own name whispered from beyond. Maybe someone will arrive, not with an army, but with silence, not with gold, but with memory. And as they sit, the others will awaken not from sleep, but from time itself. Not memory of life, memory of purpose, but guardians of the veil, walkers between stories, bearers of the vanishing crown. One inscription, found etched into obsidian in the Andes, said, "When the eighth one listens, the crown will open like an eye." To vanish is to return. Could it be that these stories are not warnings or histories, but instructions? And if so, who left them? In the frost-covered ruins of an old Scythian temple, a slab was discovered just last year. When scanned, the tablet gave off faint vibrations. We cannot say what it means. Somewhere, in some forgotten forest or salt-worn ruin, the final throne may still be untouched, echoing with the breath of centuries. But for return, and in that quiet space where the world forgets to be loud, the king in the river, the queen of flame, the boy beneath the ocean, the watcher in the storm, they will gather, not to conquer, but to remember who they truly are, what they were always meant to be, not rulers of people. And when that final echo fades, there will be nothing left but stillness, and in that stillness, something impossible. A voice, yours, asking softly, "Where did the kings go?" And the wind, at last, will answer, "They never left."